Hi all, Adi here from Hunts and Johns. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. Today I'm in deepest, darkest Surrey. Well, I'm right on the border between Surrey and West Sussex, and I'm in a place called Charlwood. Now, in today's video, we're going to go and see a windmill, a little jail, a little jail, and the shells of some old fighter jets. There's also a church here in the village called St. Nicholas, but I'm going to do that as a separate video because it has got an amazing history in there. The only problem is that, I don't know if you can see out the window, it's started to snow quite heavily. We're in the middle of a cold snap here in the UK, and I know all you American and Canadian viewers, I know I've got quite a few from across the pond, you're going to laugh at how little snow we have, but trust us, in the UK, we don't cope very well with snow, especially down here in the southeast. The northerners do it a bit better, and so does Scotland, but we get very, very little snow down here, so it tends to get chaotic if we get anything over a quarter of an inch on the ground. But I'm hoping that it's just like a light dusting, but we shall see. Anyway, windmill first, so I'm going to take you in there, show you around, and yeah, it's going to be quite interesting, something a little bit different. If you ever do want to visit yourself, you can go to Lowfield Heath Windmill.co.uk. You can see there they're on Facebook and Instagram, and they do have open days throughout the year if you fancy coming to visit. Now, this windmill first pops up on maps in the 1760s, and it's owned by a chap named James Constable, and was used to grind corn for the local community. Now, back then, wind power was the way to go, and the way they turned grain into flour. So it's fascinating to think how different things have changed today. So it worked by wind right up until the 1880s, and then it continued on for a bit longer with steam power. But like a lot of traditional windmills, it slowly fell into disrepair over the decades. By the 1950s and the 60s, it was in a pretty bad state. It had missing parts, rotting wood, and yeah, it was almost derelict. So there's a little twist to this story, because we're not actually in Lowfield Heath. That's a couple of miles, I think it's north of here. But anyway, the twist is that in Gatwick Airport's expansion in the later mid-20th century, it pretty much wiped out the old village of Lowfield Heath, and warehouses, hangars and airport facilities have now replaced homes and shops, and the only things that were actually left from that tiny community was this windmill and the church is still there. But the locals weren't ready to let this piece of heritage just disappear. So in the 1980s, a group called the Lowfield Heath Windmill Trust decided the mill needed a future. So they very carefully dismantled it in 1987, and they moved it here to Charlwood. So it's just a couple of miles away from Lowfield Heath. It was a huge job back then, and they put every piece back together and restored all the bits that were missing, and they've done a fine job. I definitely must come here on one of their open days. And you can see over there by the door there's another millstone, and there's all these parts. I know nothing about windmills. I know the basics. I know they got sails. I know how they work. So I have no idea what these inner workings are. I mean, I can see that's a cog, but that's about it. Really interesting. In the 1990s, the reconstructed mill was officially opened by Princess Alexandra, nonetheless. And over the years, volunteers and experts have brought it back to working orders, with the sails turning in with the wind again by the late 1990s, which is absolutely amazing. I've actually never seen it working, but I would love to see that. Maybe they do that on the open days. I'm going to check out that website myself. Anyway, so when you're here today, you're not just looking at a pretty old mill. It's pretty cool actually to see that underneath bit. It's a piece of local resilience, a little bit of aviation history, and centuries old engineering all in one. So after we leave this windmill, I'm going to head down to a place called Glover's Road, which is it's about a 10-minute walk down the road here, and we're going to have a look at some aircraft, well, shells of aircraft. So this is Glover's Road, and I'm actually standing on a public footpath that runs out from Glover's Wood, which is definitely worth visiting. I'll visit there and take you with me when it's bluebell season. Absolutely beautiful in there. Now these are what's left of some Sea King helicopters, and they were once used by the Royal Navy and the RAF for search and rescue missions. They're iconic machines that spent decades hauling sailors and civilians to safety. Now this isn't a forgotten military base or some secret Air Force stash. It's basically part of a private collection and aircraft salvage spot that's grown up here over the years. A local aviation enthusiast and a company dealing in surplus aircraft parts have stored a bunch of these retired airframes, and obviously they're completely stripped down, but they're right here by this public footpath. And we're going to walk down here, and like I say, this isn't an official museum, it's actually somebody's home and their lifelong aviation hobby. Now what we can see here are some Harrier jump jets. Isn't that amazing? Yes, these are the famous vertical takeoff fighters that the Brits and others flew through the late 20th century. I'm just going to walk along again. I'm still on the public footpath. It's a bit slippy here, so I'm trying not to slip. As you can see, it's on a little bit of a slope there. So these examples have had their engines out. Lots of the components have been removed, and they are essentially just shells now, but they're still fascinating to spot in a place like this. So now we're going to head down into the village, and we're going to see a very interesting little building down here, and it's known as the Cage. But despite its little creepy name, it's actually a really interesting bit of village history. So the Cage dates back to the late 1700s, and it was basically Charlwood's version of a police station before police stations were really a thing. So back then, if somebody was being drunk and disorderly, causing trouble, or just needed sobering up, they would have been locked in here overnight to cool off. It's sometimes also called a village lockup, and you'll find buildings like this all over England, although I'm not sure how many of them are actually left. But Charlwood's is pretty special because it's in such good condition, although it's used for storage now, so I'm not sure if it is actually part of somebody's property. It is a listed building, and it's a nice reminder of how small rural communities used to keep law and order without modern policing. Now I'm going to wrap the video up here. I'm just going to walk back into the village. If you did enjoy today's video, please do like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. You can always support the channel a little bit further by hitting the Buy Me a Coffee link down below. And I've got a couple more videos coming from Charlwood. We got the wooden chapel, really interesting story about that and how it used to be a former barracks, and also the local church, which has a very long and diverse history. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now.